Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. Final video before I head off to Sweden for the weekend. Don't worry, I do have a video pre-uploaded ready for tomorrow, but for today it's World of Warships, and this is Saving Jay in the American Tier 9 battleship, the Iowa. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful ship. Not too sure about the camo pattern, however. Not quite sure what's going on there, but well, it's not a beauty contest, although if it was, the Iowa would win. Visually, the Iowa is very similar to the North Carolina at Tier 8, but there are significant differences between the two ships. Technically, they both have the same armament, 9 16-inch guns in 3 turrets, 2 at the front, 1 at the back. However, the firing arc on the rear turret on the Iowa is much better than on the North Carolina, which means you don't have to expose as much of the side of the ship as you do with the North Carolina, trying to get that rear gun turret to bear. Also, they're longer barreled guns. North Carolina has 45 caliber 16-inch guns, the Iowa has 50 caliber, which means increased shell velocity and therefore increased armor penetration. She also has better side armor than the North Carolina, making her a much better tanky ship overall. But don't get too carried away. While the side armor is better, you still don't want to show the broadside of your ship to a target if you can possibly avoid it. Even a heavy cruiser at close range with 203mm guns, particularly the American heavy cruisers with their armor-piercing ammunition, give them the side of this ship at sufficiently short range, they will penetrate and they will score citadels. She's also a very long and fast ship, which can make it problematic turning to avoid torpedoes. However, she has increased torpedo protection. North Carolina only had 19%. Iowa has 27%. Finally, her anti-aircraft guns are absolutely amazing. She'd be a tough nut to crack even for a Tier 9 carrier. But in this match there are no Tier 9 carriers, just a Tier 8 Lexington on the enemy team. It is of course the ocean map, so that's even better news. No islands for those pesky destroyers to hide behind and ambush the big slow battleships, even though the Iowa is not a big slow battleship. Well, it's a big battleship, but it's anything but slow. It's got a top speed of 33 knots. He's not using that top speed yet, however. He doesn't want to stray too far ahead of his air defence escorts, and by the way, I have switched to free camera right now so I can keep track of the air battle that's about to unfold, just as he unleashes 9 16-inch shells in the direction of that enemy Atago. But check this out, he's already scored 2 kills on the torpedo bombers at a distance of 5 kilometres. The dive bombers are coming in, they're going for the York up ahead. He scored a citadel on the Atago. Look at the carnage in the air above these ships. It's not just Saving Jay and the York up ahead of him who are swatting these aircraft from the sky. There's air defence fire coming in from a New Orleans, an Atago, a couple of destroyers, another battleship, and the friendly carrier who's vectored his fighters in to intercept. And just look at these dive bombers. They're getting absolutely slaughtered. All of those attacks were launched against the York up ahead. And has he taken any damage? He's taken some, but I don't think it was from the aircraft. I think that's surface fire coming from the enemy ships. Smoke screen up ahead that appears to be very angry and firing at somebody. Concentrating their fire on the York. The York is starting to take a lot of attention from the enemy team. And of course, as he turns away and shows the side of his ship, this is when it's going to be the most dangerous for him. And in fact, there is a lot of fire coming in from up front. And check out the destroyer. Look at the Sims. Peeling in front of the main line of battle, laying smoke like an absolute boss. Saving Jay wasting no time in slowing down to take advantage of the smoke screen kindly provided by the Sims. He's sitting there right in the middle of the ocean, completely undetected. It does have to be said that the team, at least on this side of the map, worked very well together. The Atago up front, falling back into the smoke screen, he's just taken out an enemy Benson that wasn't quite as undetected, sitting in his smoke screen as he thought he was. Saving Jay, sitting in his smoke screen, keeping an eye on those torpedoes. Takes 30 seconds to reload these guns, so plenty of time to decide who you're going to shoot at next. Oh, there's the Lexington. Oh, that Scharnhorst is about to have a very bad day. He's running into all of those torpedoes. He's lost nearly all of his health. Torpedoes up ahead. No immediate threat. Guns are almost loaded. Looks like he's going to go for the Edinburgh. 2 forward turrets aimed, shots out. 6 16-inch shells. But the Edinburgh has started to turn, realising that he's being shot at by somebody with very big guns, and he's lucky to get away with just 2 over-penetrations on his superstructure. Saving J, of course, hasn't used the rear turret yet. He's thinking about shooting at the Scharnhorst. Then he realises that the Lexington is actually in range. So he gives him the good news with the rear turret. Another 3 16-inch shells. Speaking of the Lexington, enemy aircraft closing in. Saving J still undetected, by the way, sitting nice and comfortably inside his smokescreen. Forward turrets have now reloaded. He's having another go at the Edinburgh. Shots out. Another 6 16-inch shells. Can he do any better than last time? Let's see. There they go. Looks pretty good. Was pretty good. Not many hits, but one of them was a big one. A Citadel. That's now 38,000 damage done. You can see the friendly carrier is basically sacrificing his fighter aircraft to keep that Lexington spotted, as Saving J shoots down more of the Lexington's aircraft and fires a few more shots at the Lexington, since nobody else appears to be doing so. That's when he spots the enemy Atago, who is sailing backwards. You can tell by the way the smoke from his funnel is streaming over the forward end of the ship, so he's going to be moving slowly, relatively easy to hit. 6 16-inch shells, 2 Citadels, 27,000 damage. Saving J thinking for a second whether or not it's going to be worth swinging the ship around and getting his rear turret firing to finish that guy off, but that would mean he'd have to expose a little bit more than is comfortable of the side of his ship against that Scharnhorst and Iowa over there, and then the situation's taken out of his hands because the Atago gets sunk by somebody else anyway. It's at about that point where the Lexington disappears. Friendly carrier obviously deciding, screw this. If none of you guys are going to shoot this Lexington, I'm not wasting more of my aircraft keeping him spotted. And this is where things start getting interesting. There are 2 very angry smoke screens off Saving J's port bow, so he starts turning away from them in order to avoid the inevitable torpedoes that are going to be on their way. This allows him to get a broadside shot right into the German Tier 9 cruiser, the Rune, and of course at this kind of range, it's Citadel City. So there's a bit of light at the end of the tunnel there for the New Orleans, who was almost certainly going to die to the Rune before Saving J turned up. He's keeping a cautious eye on those torpedoes, as well as the barrage of fire that's coming in from the smoke screen, where the destroyers, or possibly the Edinburgh, is hidden. There's also an Ibuki closing in to finish off the Rune, but it's too little too late. The Rune has taken out the New Orleans, but he continues to present the broadside of the ship for both the Ibuki and the Iowa to shoot at. And that's going to have fairly inevitable consequences, because Saving J scores another Citadel. Unfortunately, it's just a Citadel and an over-penetration, so the Rune is still able to keep firing, and that's going to be bad news for the Ibuki, because the Rune does manage to get another broadside salvo of armour piercing away and causes significant damage to the Ibuki before he eventually succumbs to all the guns shooting at him. So, immediate panic over. They no longer have to worry about a Tier 9 cruiser roving around behind them. However, let's not forget there are still 2 destroyers on the enemy team in a position to work their way around the flank. And one of them just popped up and then disappeared once again. So they still have a torpedo threat on their flanks, and they do obviously need to pay attention to that. You can see the smoke screen, but they need to form up again, because here come the Lexington strike aircraft once more. Looks like they're going for the Geyser now. But the friendly carrier is once again on the ball with his fighter aircraft, and the combined anti-aircraft firepower of a York, a Gneisenau, an Iowa and an Ibuki is definitely not to be sniffed at. This is where... oh crap, ran into the Ibuki. Yeah, not really paying attention, which is understandable with torpedoes closing in from behind, but oh, there's the Benson. Nope, he's gone. There's the Kagero, and he's still there. So naturally, everybody unleashes everything that they have against the Kagero while he's still spotted. And the shots go in, and it's the York who sinks him, as Saving J shoots down yet more aircraft. The Lexington throwing everything he's got left at the Gneisenau there, and that's when Saving J realises he's got shots at the side of the enemy Iowa with all 9 of his 16-inch guns. So, well, who wouldn't take a shot like that? Unfortunately, while the Iowa does have very long-range firepower with its 16-inch 50 caliber guns, they're not terribly accurate, and that was very disappointing. 1 over penetration only. The Gneisenau up ahead is in serious trouble. He's so far out on the flank, he's actually coming under fire from 2 different directions, but that's not really the big issue. The big issue is that he has to turn towards the Benson, because the Benson's launched torpedoes, and that's given everybody else unarmoured parts of his ship to shoot at. and they're taking full advantage of it. Second salvo against the enemy Iowa, and it doesn't look that much better. Well, it is better, but it's not that much better than the first salvo. Gneisenau there now in serious trouble with the York coming to his assistance, but it's the high explosive gunfire from the Benson that's going to put him down, and the Benson stops shooting because he's sunk the Gneisenau and disappears just as Saving J fires, which means the York is now out on the flank. Iowa and North Carolina are now selecting him as the target. The team are kind of getting split apart here. They're no longer really in a position to mass their anti-aircraft firepower as the surviving torpedo bombers come in, and it's the Iowa who takes the York out, which means that Saving J is now in the unenviable position of being stuck out in the flank and having to point the nose of his ship towards the Iowa and the North Carolina with an Edinburgh and a Benson on his flank. Shots out again at the Iowa. Can he do any better this time? It's going to take a while for them to get there. It is extreme range. It looks reasonably good. North Carolina's burning quite well, and in fact, no, it was absolutely terrible. Not a single hit. The Iowa started turning, and he couldn't do anything other than a bunch of over-penetrations and misses to the Iowa when he was presenting the big flat side of the ship to shoot at, and now he's going to be showing a much, much harder target. But hang on, what's going on here? Looks like the North Carolina has slowed down, and he's waiting for the Iowa to overtake him, so the two ships are clustered nicely together. So he lets them have it, hoping that even if he misses one target, the misses will hit the other target. There's the Edinburgh on the flank. And he does score. Again, it's disappointing. One hit, one bounce. Two enemy battleships now coming under air attack from our own carrier. And there's the Edinburgh. There's still a Benson out there on the flank somewhere as well. But the Edinburgh, oh come on, at this kind of range? At this kind of range, he stopped to smoke up. But those are hits. No citadels, but a bunch of armor-piercing penetration, so he's probably lost about 10 to 15,000 health. Now the team are ahead on points, but they're only ahead on points because they control two of the flags, and the Edinburgh is capping one of the flags. The team have lost more ships, so he needs to hit this Edinburgh again, but he can't see him. And that's when the Edinburgh gives his position away by firing his guns. So he fires blind into the smoke and sinks the Edinburgh. He's still in a pretty tight spot here, however. You saw what the Benson did to the Gneisenau, and he's going to do it to Saving J as well if he gives him half the chance. So he knows more or less exactly where the Benson's torpedoes are going to be coming from, and he turns the nose of his ship towards them. It's the lesser of two evils because it's given the side of his ship to the Iowa and the North Carolina, but the enemy Iowa has been forced to turn to avoid torpedoes, which means Saving J, at this kind of range, is guaranteed to sink him. Let's not celebrate just yet, however. He is still in a tight spot. Again, lesser of two evils. The Benson's just fired his torpedoes, so he can put up with the Benson's high explosive gunfire. He has to point the nose of this ship towards that North Carolina, otherwise the North Carolina can do to him what he just did to the Iowa. That Benson, however, has been a real pain in the ass. He's set him on fire and he's capping. But we can see more or less where he is by his gunfire. So Saving J gives him the rear turret, two of the shells hit, resets the capture progress, the forward turrets swing around, the Benson keeps firing, keeps not really giving his position away, but giving Saving J something to estimate that he can shoot at. He gives him the forward turrets, another 6 shells, more hits, resets the cap yet again. That is some pretty spectacular shooting, but it's not shutting the Benson up. He's keeping up the barrage, and he's done so much damage to Saving J's ship at this point. He's been forced to burn all of his consumables. They're now all on cooldown. The North Carolina is closing in. All hands, this is the captain. Brace for impact. Ramming speed. And it's debatable whether or not the North Carolina saw that coming, but that's 205,000 damage, his third kill, and the Confederate award. And then the Ibuki nails the Benson with a torpedo spread fired blind into his smokescreen. Just the enemy carrier left, and he's got a Sims closing in on him. But the fun and games are not over yet. Let's not forget, this is the Sims that provided that fantastic smokescreen for the team right at the start of the match. He's about to suffer what I can only describe as a sudden rush of shit to the brain. I mean, I'm not judging him, But just watch this. If you're in a Sims and you're trying to take out an enemy carrier, you've got three choices. You either fire the torpedoes from outside of detection range and silence your guns, or you stay outside of secondary gun battery range and take him out with your guns, or you get close enough that your torpedoes cannot possibly miss. And this Sims has managed to do none of the above. His torpedoes have all missed. Only now he starts using his guns, and he's loitering around inside secondary gun battery range of the Lexington, and the Lexington's knocked his engine out, so he's a sitting duck. And seriously, how do you fuck that up? I'm not judging him. This guy provided valuable support and assistance for his team, but he could have done that a lot better. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the Lexington did survive that battle, but the difference in points was just too extreme. And that was a win for Saving Jay in the Iowa. And that's pretty much it for me for today. I now have to pack because I'm heading off to Sweden first thing in the morning as a guest of Wargaming, where they're unveiling the new gaming centre that they're opening up at the Swedish Tank Museum at Arsenalen just outside of Stockholm. It is of course a community event, so I do hope to see as many of you there as possible. I understand if you can't make it, however, it is Sweden. But don't worry, I have pre-uploaded a video for Saturday, so you have something to watch while I'm away. And on that bombshell, enjoy your weekend, take care, and I'll catch you next time.